Hey, this is Joel with McDonald WebWorks. I wanted to walk through an example on how to use Kadence Advanced Query Loops with ACF or Advanced Custom Fields relationship posts. This does require you to add a PHP filter to your site in order to make it work, but we are using the documentation provided by both Kadence WP and ACF in order to do this. And it's not a heavy lift. And there's examples that basically you can just like copy and paste and edit, and hopefully it'll get you up and running. So for this example, I have a local instance of WordPress set up. I've got 7 posts. I have a primary post, and then I've got 3 related posts and 3 not related posts. If we open the primary post, we'll see on the right-hand side here, I have a query loop that's displaying the 6 posts that are also on the site, 3 not related posts and 3 related posts. So the object is to only show the related posts. And we're going to do that using an ACF relationship field and also using a custom query for the advanced query loops. If we look at the back end, just kind of walk through where we are. Again, we've got our 7 posts. We've got an ACF field group called custom fields with a related post field, which is a relationship field. Couple notes on the relationship field is that I have this set to return post ID, which will just sort of simplify our code later, especially if we are not using bidirectional for this relationship field. And what I mean about bidirectional is if we hit the advanced tab, there's a toggle here called bidirectional, which is off by default. What this means, if it's off, that means that if in the primary post, you set in that related fields, you set the related posts there. That is where that data lives. The other posts, the related posts, aren't impacted. However, if you use bidirectional and then create that relationship, both posts are updated. So for example, if you select all of the 3 related posts, all of those related post fields within those posts are also going to be updated so that you could kind of query back and forth. This probably gives you more flexibility on where to create those relationships, but it's not needed, especially if you know that you are only going to be setting those relationships on that primary post. So the code and probably like processing is a bit more straightforward and simpler and maybe quicker. Probably not noticeably so, unless it's like a huge site. If you're not using bidirectional and only pulling the post data for the primary post, but bidirectional probably gives you that more flexibility. I'm going to leave bidirectional on just so that you could show that you can do this both ways. And again, returning post ID for this as well. The other things to keep in mind is you do have to have the Kadence Pro in order to use elements. In order to toggle that on, obviously, you're going to go to Appearance, Kadence, toggle on hooked elements, and then you'll have the elements, and then you'll be able to create a single post template. For the single post template, all we're doing is pulling in the title, content, and then we've got our query loop here. I did not make any changes within the settings of the query loop. So by default, we're pulling posts. I'm not limiting by any taxonomy. I didn't change order by. All of this is standard. The only thing within sort of this area that I changed is the query card. I set it to 1 column. I got rid of the image and the excerpt. Sorry. That's the only thing that I've done under the query loop, and by default, it's just pulling all of the posts that aren't the current posts that you are looking at. So we're not going to make any changes there. So we are now set up to talk about how to how to create a custom query for that advanced query loop. So under this documentation, custom queries for advanced query loop block from Kadence WP, we get this example. And so basically what we are going to do is going to need to grab the ID of the query. So remember, in Kadence, when you create a query, you are actually saving that query separately so that you can reuse it if needed later. Same thing with those the query cards. Those are reusable, and they're actually saved separately within Kadence. So if you go to Kadence, you'll see that you've got queries. And here's our related posts query. And so if we edit that query in the URL here, you see post equals 27. That's the ID that we will need to copy or reference for later for our code. And so we're going to use 27 here instead of this 5283. So I've already added that to my child theme. So let's pull up Visual Studio and take a look at what that looks like. So I've got the Kadence blocks pro query loop query vars. Again, this you want this in your functions.php file, or if you were using like a custom plugin, you'll put it there. Or if you're using like PHP snippets or something, like you can do that. But here we are checking to see like, hey, is it query ID number 27? If it is, then do this code. I'm pulling in global posts just for, it's standard practice in order to make sure I can grab the current post data. And then what we're doing here is based on the documentation for advanced custom fields, specifically with the sort of bidirectional aspect of relationship fields. So if we scroll down sort of toward the bottom of this code, we'll see like, hey, how do you, they're using like medical locations, medical office locations, and doctors in their example. But the single location.php is giving you the example on how to pull related posts. So specifically, like how do we pull like a list of doctors related to this specific location? And so we are using this as the example. And if we go back to our code, we're saying we're pulling posts. We're pulling from the related posts field. We're pulling the current post ID. And if this sort of setup looks kind of odd to you, if you take a look at the documentation, it does speak to why you'll want to set this up like this. It's because the data is serialized, and we're essentially looking for like value and making sure that it's matching the full ID versus just part of the ID, because the data within the field looks like this, and you don't want to basically have a false positive and match where it's not really a match. So that's why this query is set up like this. So we're basically saying really only pull if you get an exact match, et cetera, et cetera. The other thing I'm doing here is pulling IDs, similarly to how we set up the relationship field to only pull post IDs. I don't want to return post objects from this. I just want an array of post IDs. And then this will work. So once we relate those posts. So if we go back to our site and go into edit our posts and go to our primary posts. So we've got our relationship field down here, and it's going to load our posts. So we're going to choose all of our related posts, and it's going to show up on the right-hand side here, and we're going to hit save. And then if we now view this post, we are only going to get related posts. And that's because we are altering the query being used with this filter. Because down here, we are adding the posts in. If you're familiar with WP query, post in, we're serving an array of related posts. And it's saying only restrict the return post to the ones that we're returning using this get posts, right? This isn't the only way to do this, though. Again, this works well if you are bidirectional, because when we set up bidirectionality for that field and we chose those related posts were also updated to show that they were related to the primary post, which is what this is searching for. Because remember, we're searching for the primary post ID within the meta of the related posts. If you don't have bidirectionality turned on, and you're trying to just and you're only editing the primary post only, you don't really want to worry about querying the other posts, you can also do it this way. So we're going to comment out that, and we're going to bring this in. So we're going to say if relationship is only set for primary parent posts, then what we can do is just use get field related posts of the current post. And this, because we have it set to return post IDs, is going to provide the array of related posts for the posts in parameter for the query. And if we save that, and go back to the site and hit refresh, nothing changed, because that works as well. So that's two ways of doing that, depending on whether you're using bidirectional or you're just pulling the data from that related posts. So that's it. That's how that works. I'm going to probably provide the snippet here, used as the example in GitHub if you want to grab that fairly easily. But I hope that this walkthrough was helpful.